Well, hey there. Welcome back to this episode of the Dance Business Daily. I'm very excited to talk with my guest today, Lydia Woodward. We're going to talk about what it takes to think like a CEO. This is Dance Business Daily, a daily podcast where you can always find real talk with real studio owners, where we'll share best practices, success stories, and actionable insights so we can all get a little bit better together. I'm Bryce Conlon, and I'll be your guide. Welcome to the show, and let's get into it. Hey, welcome back to the show. I'm really excited to have my guest with me this morning. Lydia, welcome. Good morning. How are you today?
I'm great. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, Lydia and I were just sharing with each other that we're both a little bit nervous to be doing this. Lydia, because you're not really a podcast guest very often, and me because this is our first, as I mentioned to you, our first real episode where we are talking to someone that we don't already have a deep relationship with. So I'm a little nervous. You're a little nervous. I think we're going to make this work though, right?
Yes.
All right. So Lydia, you are the founder of the Southeastern Indiana Dance Company. Did I get that correct?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about your studio and how you kind of got into the role that you're in now.
Well, my background is obviously dance, but I was working in the corporate world, and someone asked me if I would be interested in teaching some dance classes. So I said, sure. So I started teaching 2 classes a week. I ended up getting kicked out of my space. So I was kind of scrambling. Finally found the perfect space and moved in with 7 students and 2 classes a week. I had another small business going that I hoped would carry the dance studio, when in fact the dance studio started carrying the other business until I finally just shut that business down.
Wow, I didn't know that. So pause. So you were in corporate America before. So what did you do in corporate America? That's fascinating to me.
I was the executive director of 2 different, at 2 different times, nonprofit corporations.
Wow.
So I've always considered myself a professional beggar, always asking for money. And I'm still doing that.
Well, I think that's what it means to be in business for yourself, right?
Yes.
So you made the move, you started teaching classes. It sounds like, in when was that when you kind of opened your first studio and got into business?
Well, not my first studio, but this
This
studio opened 15 years ago. We're celebrating 15 years.
Wow. And was it an instant, you said you had 2 businesses kind of going concurrently, and you hoped that, the dance studio, you could support, maybe let's call it the hobby business
Exactly.
with the real business, right?
Right.
And, but then the studio started to pick up. Was it a quick growth, or did it take a while before it kind of started to gain some traction?
No, it definitely took a while. Mainly because I'd run businesses before, but a dance studio is not your normal business. So basically, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. Just wandering around in the wilderness.
So what is it? Because this is fascinating. Because my background in Christian, my business partner's background, are in marketing. We have cut our teeth doing marketing for corporations, for sports franchises, for restaurant and hospitality groups. Like, that's where we got our start. And we had the same experience when we came into the dance world. It was like, whoa, this is a whole different ball of wax. And we've never really been able to get our finger on why exactly. But to hear that you had the same experience, tell me a little more about that experience, that it was like, this is different than any other business that I've ever been in or run. Why do you say that? Because we had the same experience.
I think it's because, well, number one is that people don't look at dance studios as a business. They think it's just a hobby. Oh, I mean, I had one parent say to me, I made some comment about paying wages, and her comment was, "You get paid? Uh, I don't do this for free." So that's one thing. People just think it's a hobby. It's also dance studio owners make amazing human beings. They do more than teach dance technique, or they should be doing more than teaching dance technique. There's so many things that dance helps children with. You know, it helps with focus in schools. In school, it helps with confidence levels, creativity, ability. There's just so much involved, and that doesn't even touch on the business side, where you, I don't know, it's just a whole different way to reach people.
There's some truth in that, isn't there? Where when you think about, I mean, in most cases, you have your business and you sell a widget and you look at the benefits of your widget, whatever the widget is, and you say, if you buy our widget, then X, Y, and Z, right? You'll go faster or higher or be stronger or whatever, right? Like your widget is very easy to quantify, but in
Right.
but in but in the world of dance, you're right. It's you're teaching dance, like its techniques, its rhythm, its footwork, its posture. But really, that's not what you're delivering. It's this whole other like soft skills, human development
Exactly.
side, which is tough to even begin to talk about, I think, in many ways.
Yes,
Fascinating.
but you're correct. It is so much more than just teaching technique.
Wow. So you said something to me the other day, and this is what I want to ask you about because I'd never heard. I talked to a lot of dance studio owners, um, in the work that we do. We hear from studio owners who are just getting started in business. We talk to studio owners who have been in business for 35, 40 years, and I've never heard anybody say what I heard you say, which is, I want to be the CEO of our dance company, of our dance studio. And it just
Yes.
it stood out to me. Well, again, because I'd never heard it, but even more than that, because it was such an probably because you helped me shift one of my own cognitive biases, where I realized, like, oh, this is a business, and you have a CEO of any other business. Why wouldn't you have one here? It's embarrassing to say, but you helped me flip that switch. But how did you come to that conclusion that you wanted to be the CEO of a dance business?
I have a a wonderful mentor, and what he tries to instill is that you stop working in the business and start working on the business. So, yes, I will always work in my business because I will always teach, but I am learning to delegate all those little $10 an hour jobs to someone I pay $10 an hour, and it's a very different mindset for me because all I did was work in the business. I never stopped to look at the big picture. And I think the biggest change for me has been planning. I
Mm.
do I do a yearly plan. I do a quarterly plan every 3 months. I do a monthly plan at the beginning of every month. And now I'm starting to do weekly plans so that my goals are set out very specifically and tells me exactly what I should be working on every day.
That's amazing. Okay, so for those who may be listening who have heard the phrase working in the business versus on the business, working in the business, an example of that, Lydia, is going in and actually teaching classes. Is that? Or
Teaching classes, picking out costumes, sorting costumes, welcoming your students and their parents if you allow them in. That's working in the business.
and
So
what would
now,
be, yeah, and if you would like give some examples of what working on the business might look like to inspire those who may be listening.
well, one is that it's it's I am now starting to work on my project plan for our next session, which starts in 3 months. So I'm planning, excuse me, I'm planning our marketing campaign. I'm planning all the big pieces of that whole session. Then as we get closer, then you start um, breaking it down into smaller pieces. But so right now I'm planning the calendar, I'm what classes I'm going to teach. And then in a month or so, I'll put it all together once
I
I've laid it
love
out.
that. I love that. So it's taking these big goals and dreams and first crystallizing what it is that you want to achieve, right?
Right.
Yeah. Because that's that's a hard part is knowing even where you want to go because it's easy, in my opinion, in my experience, really, to hide behind busyness, right? And it's like you're always doing stuff, then it feels like, you know, I must be doing a good job because look at how busy I am.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so you've had that experience as well.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. And it's easier. It's easier to do the little daily tasks instead of stopping and doing the planning.
Yeah, it is. It really is. Yeah. Did you, so has this freed up time for you? Like, you know, both bandwidth and headspace for you to focus on?
Yes, it has. Not enough.
Yeah,
I'm
never
still,
enough.
I've been looking for a ballet teacher for 4 years. But I live in this little small town of 6,500 people in the middle of nowhere, and no one wants to come here. You know, the closest city is an hour away, but they don't want to drive that far.
Well, we'll see. We'll hopefully this will get you some traction. So we're looking at like a Batesville, Indiana, right? Is that where we are?
Yes,
Okay, so
yes.
if you know of any ballet teachers in the Batesville area,
We're
send them our
halfway.
way.
We're halfway between Cincinnati and Indianapolis.
Yeah. So Lydia, I got to ask you a question because I remember the first time I started really working on my business. It wasn't this business. It was younger. It was a video production marketing business, and it was the first time where I had handed off everything that needed to be done that week to somebody else. And I remember having time to look to the future and plan our goals and set vision in feeling both antsy, like really antsy about sitting down with quote nothing to do. But I also felt really guilty about it. Like there were other people who were doing all this heavy lifting and I'm sitting at my desk with my feet up and a cup of tea, just like thinking about the future. And I actually felt really guilty about that. Have you experienced anything like that?
Oh yes.
You
Oh
you
yeah.
have. You have. Tell me about that.
Absolutely. Well, it's because you're made to. I was brought up thinking that if you are idle, you're wasting time, right? So you have to always. I'm getting ready to sneeze here.
Bless you.
So you have to always be doing something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to just sit back and think and plan and be creative does seem like an extravagance. So, yes, I do know that feeling.
Yeah, it felt like it was doing something wrong, right? Like at
Right.
any moment, someone was going to walk through the door and find me out, you know? I did not, I didn't like that, but it does make a big difference
Yes.
when suddenly you're able to articulate where it is that you want to go. You're able to take your quarterly, monthly, weekly plans, break them into small parts, give people specific tasks,
Right.
which is very helpful. I know a lot of studio owners struggle with delegation, right?
Yes. Very much so.
Right.
Very much so.
And delegation's hard. I think this is again, I'd like your opinion on this, from my perspective looking in, the reason why is because there's not enough specificity in what they're asking for. So they'll go to one of their people and say, okay, run a marketing campaign. And it's like, that's too broad. And so you're going to be disappointed in the results versus if you could say, I'd like you to go and find any great photos that we've taken in the last 5 years and put them into this file. Well, now they can do that and they can be successful and you can be successful. Do you think that that's like, or how have you experienced, like, as you've started to delegate to people, how do you hand those tasks off in a way that they're able to win?
What I found out is that I have to know what the task is. I have to know I have to know what it is so I can explain and express exactly what I want. And yes, it does have to be in small bites because for me, I'm the only one that knows what's up here. So I have to be able to verbalize it and get it out.
All right. So what I heard from you, and I absolutely love what you've kind of communicated, is this idea of delegation in tiny parts, right? Like it's in your brain, and if it's in your brain, then it's not in anyone else's brain, and it's difficult to delegate, but it does create opportunities for you to focus on future growth in a way that you can't otherwise.
And another thing that I have learned to do is to write down the processes. You know, how do you set up Facebook ads? There's a whole little Bible of how to do that. You know, how do you open and close the studio? What are responsibilities? How do you order costumes? How do you size them? This is all in our studio Bible. And so if I lose my office person, the next person that comes in, they know exactly how to do it.
That I love. We're big fans. We call them SOPs over here, or standard operating procedures. It's like, here's your one sheet from top to bottom. Just follow it from like point 1 to point 15, and you will find some moderate level of success.
Right.
It allows for, if you've not done this yet, they're amazing because it allows for continuity, right? Because you are going to move through things and your business doesn't like fall apart just because your front office person leaves, or in this past year, they get sick and they're not around for a month or 2 or 4. What do? You can just grab anybody off the street and be like, okay, here you go.
It also allows for the studio to run if I'm not there, because I don't want to be at the studio 80 hours a week. I'm sorry. I love my job, but not that much.
I don't think you need to be sorry about that. Oh goodness. Well, Lydia, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's all right. I was just going to say, I like to have a life. So.
Well, it is important, right? I just talked with a studio owner this morning, and she said the same thing. She's young. She's, like, listen, I'm, recently separated from her spouse, and now she's like, I'm ready to get back into the world and live my life again. And
Right.
I can't, because I'm spending 85 hours a week at the studio. Like,
Exactly.
and that's no way to live. All right. So we've covered a lot in, roughly 15, 20 minutes. We've talked about the studio, where you are, what you're about. We've talked about kind of this viewpoint of becoming the CEO of your business. The practical takeaways there are: take the big pieces, the big vision, like get clear on that, and then break it into tiny pieces so that you can delegate it out. Map out those processes and document them so that you can involve other people on your team, and it's not just all in your brain, which is amazing. And so if we could, just the last thing that I want to get from you is, what's the big dream for you? Like, what is ultimate success in your studio business?
Wow. Ultimate success, I would say 250 students and a minimum of 10% profit.
That's the goal, huh?
Yeah.
250 students and minimum 10% profit.
Because 10% profit is really only breaking even. So ideally, I'd like to have 25%. But
Yeah.
minimum 10.
Oh, well, let's aim high, right? Let's aim.
Well, in a town of 6,500 people, 250 students is a pretty high aim.
I think that's really, I'm so impressed by you, just personally. I really am impressed by the demeanor and the way that you carry yourself and the way that you think about your business. It's unique. You might not realize it's unique because you are you and you live with you all the time. But again, as somebody who talks to studio owners all across the country, you're showing up with a mentality and a viewpoint that is uncommon. And I want to call it out and applaud you for it. And for any studio owners who are listening to this, who are trying to figure out, how do I begin this journey? I think step number one is doing what Lydia gave to us at the beginning of this call, which is see yourself as a real business owner. It's not a hobby business. It's a business.
Right.
It's a fun business, can be a fun business.
Oh, yes.
But it's a real business. Mm-hmm. And you're the CEO. I absolutely love it.
Brian, thank you. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Well, Lydia, it was great to have you on the show today. I absolutely loved talking with you, hearing your story, getting to know you a little bit differently than I think we've been introduced to each other so far. And I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here on the show with us. And if you like what you heard and you're hungry for even more candid conversations with dance studio owners just like you can find us on Facebook under Dance Motion Marketing. We'll come right up. You can subscribe to our channel on YouTube and click the bell for notifications, or you can find us on all the traditional podcast outlets: Apple iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher Radio, and anywhere where you get your podcasts. That's it for today. Chat soon.